All right, so next up we have Gabriel Pol, and Gabe is investigating how trees could be valued at NHS sites. So by exploring how these systems are designed, can we challenge the assumptions that they are based on?
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Sash, as well. That was fantastic. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Millview, which is a hospital for adults with mental health problems in Hove, East Sussex. It has 4 inpatient wards that treat general mental health conditions. There's a few other buildings there as well, but I'm focusing on the grounds and how might trees and other vegetation be valued at an NHS mental health hospital site, especially in the context of sustainable design to reduce carbon, increase biodiversity, and improve patient and staff health outcomes. And time's short, so I'm going to talk about one aspect which didn't go very well on my project, didn't go as I expected anyway, and that was around the sort of financial economic side. But before I do that, I need to show you some concept drawings. And just first off, I wanted to say that on our MA Sustainable Design, I think our relationship with experts or professionals, I just call it complicated, with questions like, if you say you are an expert, why are you an expert? Who are you being an expert for? And have you asked them? And how do you know you're doing the right thing? So for me here, first off, I'm an expert by experience. I work for Sussex Partnership, NHS Foundation Trust, who look after Millview, amongst other things. And an expert by experience is someone who is or has been a service user or a carer who now assists the clinical teams in their work. And then my other sort of hat is that I've been involved in projects to do with nature for quite a long time now. And yeah, as Sesh mentioned, we've got workbooks for this project, so the next sentence is lifted from that. So in relation to the concept plans, these are meant as discussion articles and are by no means presented as finished artifacts. Their intention is to create further discourse and discussion that hopefully can be developed within a participatory framework, including staff, service users, carers, visitors, and anybody else who's interested. So if you don't mind, just for a minute, I'm going to put on my expert hat and share my screen, show you some slides. Hopefully I'll get the right one. Can somebody just confirm that's up?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So this is the general area I'm looking at. So it's mental health, hospitals, nature, economics, climate change. So this is a Google map of the Millview Hospital, and focusing on the grounds. So they're currently defined by hard surfaces, cut grass, manicured hedgerows, and boundary trees. So the landscape maintenance here revolves around mowing, weed spraying, hedge cutting, and tree surgery. Surveys of the trees are carried out to determine if they could cause a problem, but not in terms of their value. I just want to say there's nothing unusual about that. This is really normal landscape maintenance practice. So these concept drawings focus on the mown grass areas. By introducing grass meadows, more trees and smaller plants, this creates an area that improves biodiversity, is beneficial for social cohesion and health, and moves from being carbon positive. By that I mean it's emitting and it becomes carbon negative. And I just wanted to add here, because I hadn't seen Sash's presentation before today, but I think the images you had with your trusty steed out in the woods, that's kind of what I'm aiming for here. This image highlights the naturalistic views visible from hospital ward bedroom windows. So I've closed in here. I've shown ward bedroom windows, the 4 wards I mentioned. I've shown them as the blue lines and what could be achieved. So evidence suggests that views of nature are beneficial to mental health and could therefore speed up recovery within mental health settings. And this could all be achieved as a collaboration between staff, patients, carers and others, all focusing on NHS objectives and the 5 ways to wellbeing, which are to connect, be active, learn, take notice and to give. And I like this last slide. Most of this is achieved just by not mowing. So you just bear with me, I need to unshare. Has that stopped sharing? Brilliant, thank you. Happily take that off now, no more expert hats. So this is the kind of problem I had. So there's lots of trees at Millview, especially on the boundaries, probably 95% of the trees or 90% are around the boundaries. There are trees in it, but not so many. I wanted to establish value instead. So I used some software called an iTree Canopy survey. And this gives values to the trees in terms of sort of atmospheric chemicals, really, particularly carbon, and it also adds financial values. And when I did this, they weren't as high as I'd hoped for, and that was a bit disappointing. And I know how it happened. Learning about this software, I looked into an organisation called Trigonomics, and there's loads of different types of iTree that are more complicated, but they worked with councils to look at the value of the trees like across a whole borough. And this work was really valuable because often the tree officer in a council is just seen to have a load of liabilities that can smash cars and drop leaves everywhere. So they did literally change the position of forestry officers, now showing that they had like thousands of pounds worth of assets, and they did it in London and Glasgow, and so we're talking about millions of pounds worth of assets. The values I got were okay, but they just surprised me a bit, so I was a bit stuck. So I borrowed something that I've been using in garden design lately, called the Pathfinder app, made by Climate Positive Design, and I looked at the grass and the mown grass, and I basically was able to establish that the current mowing regime emits more carbon over time than it just emits carbon basically. So this kind of transformation has massive carbon negative benefits, as in, you know, really good for sequestration. But this kind of work doesn't have any values attached to it at the moment, so I couldn't talk about the finances of that. So like, coming back to trees, it just feels like trees are just this massive problem, and that compared to, say, things that have value like a house or stocks and shares, which can go up and down, and it's like you're always really happy when they go up. If you buy a tree, you've literally just spent the money and that's it. And when it grows up and all the values of a tree improve, you don't get that with a tree. In fact, normally it just becomes big and then becomes a liability. So I just wanted to mention somebody called Indy Yohar from Dark Matter Labs, because he's talked about the fact that the true value of trees is not recognized, and would identify that. I think if I talked to him about what I did with the iTree Canopy, he'd just say that it didn't have all the values included. And he's talked about how when you're talking about this trees in a project, you have to compare them with other things, like some kind of infrastructure project. And I think his point being that trees can provide so much, including they improve air quality, they reduce flooding, they've got cooling effects, they capture carbon, they provide habitat for wildlife and food, and they have all these social benefits as well, and for local communities. And you know, I talk a lot in this project about nature health benefits for people, like the images Sash showed. So then I did some maths on the concept plan to try and work this out, and I estimated that a decent tree would cost about £300. This is something that looked good, had an immediate impact, but wasn't going to become a liability. They're not planted near buildings. And then I compared this to what they call an occupied bed day. So this is how much it costs to have a patient overnight in the hospital, which at the moment is about £316.41 for an adult patient. So assuming I slightly underestimated the tree, roughly like for like, each tree put in the project would match a bed day, and I'd estimated 50 trees from that concept drawing. So sort of 50 bed days, and I wondered what that might save. I don't know, by the way, but I just thought, how could this be seen as a mental health infrastructure project at Millview Hospital? Thinking about the kind of benefits that we talk about, so green walking groups for patients, gardening, wildlife surveys, and then better views for the staff and the patients, places to sit, and then and visitors as well. So just finally, to drive improvements within the NHS, the value of projects needs to be shown in terms of health outcomes and their financial value. So we have to be clever about how we show the value of projects to incorporate the social, economic and environmental impacts together. And my question to you back at the end is can you turn care into cash? That's it. Thanks, Katie.
Excellent. Thanks, Gabe. That was really interesting. And again, yeah, sorry to kind of skip through. I'm sure everybody really wants to chat to you more and ask you questions, but we're going to move on to Matt's presentation now. So I'm just going to stop the recording and spotlight Matt.